Hi guys, it's Mutsa from the Management Accounting and Finance Department, and today I'm going to be revising with you the CTA Level 2 and Full-Time 2019 Test 1. And I'm going to revise specifically Required 1. So Required 1 asked you to perform a SWOT analysis. What is to perform? To perform, it is an action or a doing word. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to perform what is known as a SWOT analysis. What is a SWOT analysis? A SWOT analysis, it is a tool that is used to analyze the strategic position. As PMHL, what is their current strategic position? So PMHL was the entity that we were given in the scenario that we were supposed to analyze using SWOT analysis. And further says your answer should not include expansion into the South African market. So by not, it means the specific section where there's information on expansion into the South African market, that section is scoped out in your SWOT analysis. Communication skills, that is clarity of expression, was limited to 1 mark, giving you a grand total of 21 marks. Now, as we want to answer our required, let's go back to our scenario. So we want to look for the section where it's written expansion into the South African market. So this specific section has been scoped out. As we look for other information, this is the same information which has been scoped out of the SWOT analysis. So as we are going to analyze the strategic position, we are going to ignore this section. Now let's go back and further expand our required. So we've been told we need to perform, which is an action, and we need to perform a SWOT analysis. What is a SWOT analysis? SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Oh, sorry about the spelling for weaknesses. Okay, let's move on. So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses specifically look at the internal environment, and opportunities and threats look at the external environment. Now, for you to answer this required, you are supposed to identify triggers from the scenario. So we have been given a lot of information, so we are supposed to pick triggers from the scenario which would adequately address SWOT analysis. So from the given information, we are supposed to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. In your identification of the triggers, the information that we are supposed to use was limited, as I explained earlier, to the information in the scenario, which I highlighted as triggers. Now let's identify common student pitfalls on this specific required. So the pitfalls for this required was 1. Since this is a SWOT analysis, students were supposed to identify the SWOT under a specific heading. So there was supposed to be a heading for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the student's solution. So where there was no heading, no marks were awarded. Number 2, a student, as I highlighted, was supposed to use triggers from the scenario. So, since this was a company or an entity in the insurance sector, probably you have information which is current, which is relevant, that is in line with the current operating environment, but was not specifically written or provided in the scenario. So for such responses, students were limited or were given marks limited to 2 marks. Why? Because you are supposed to use information that you have been given to make a specific decision. Or in this case, you are supposed to use triggers from the scenario to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Moving on. To analyze properly the strategic position, students were supposed to identify trigger plus an explanation. So, if you identified the correct trigger, but you didn't provide an explanation, and by explanation I mean a student is supposed to explain why it is a strength, explain why it is a weakness, explain why it is an opportunity and a threat, so that you obtain your full mark. So if you identified the correct trigger, but you didn't provide any explanation, no marks were awarded. So going forward, please, when you're doing such a question or when you're answering such a question, for each and every trigger, please explain why. Why is it a strength? Why is it a weakness? So in line with that, communication skills mark was given to a student who had put a heading, who had used triggers from the scenario, and further explained to attain 1 mark for the communication skills. So another issue from this exam was use of shorthand. Like e.g. Forex. So you are supposed to use the correct terminology. So e.g. a student is supposed to write example. And for Forex, you're supposed to write foreign currency. Moving forward, on a general analysis, this required was performed well by most of the students, and most of the students managed to score 50% plus on this specific required. So if you have any further questions with regard to the required one, please feel free to come through for a consult and maybe we can discuss further. Thank you for going through this video. See you next time.